I mean, really, what's the point? Hello, and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 185. It is the second day of the week, aka the Quadzilla workout. I am feeling pretty good. I'm going to the gym a little later than I wanted to. The camera's a little crooked, but hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. But anyways, to the main subject matter at hand. Why are you holding on? And I know that sounds like a crazy idea for a video, but the reason why this came up and I wanted to talk about it again, I talked about it briefly when I was mentioning the fact that I was cleaning out my garage the other day. And now I wanted to talk about it because I was like, oh yeah, this came up again a little bit because there's still more stuff that's happening that's still in the garage that I probably should get rid of. And also something else, but we'll probably talk about that in the voiceover. But basically, while cleaning out my garage with like my stuff from it first, and then all the other stuff that was in there, because it wasn't just my stuff, obviously, but from my stuff that was in there, there were a lot of things that I was like, why am I holding on to this? Like, what am I waiting for? Like, you know, I could justifiably say that there were certain things that were worth hanging on to, and a few other things that are like, okay, I get it. For example, I'll give you something that as to what I've held on to were my old Transformers collection. Now, do I have a shitload of them? Yes. Is it like a lot of them? Not necessarily, but there are enough where eventually I would like to be able to have my own space to display them all, because they were a part of my childhood, and I was a really big part of my childhood, and I took care of most of them, so they're still in relatively good shape. So that is something that I wanted to keep, right? So that is something that I would say was worth keeping. But then there were other things in there that I was like, why am I holding on to this? And then it was like, all right, time to let it go. But then that entire thing of like, do I want to let this go? What if I want it again later? And that entire thing. And this entire subject matter is going to be basically about that, really, is the feeling as to why you won't let things go, and maybe like why these things have such deep-rooted like connections to you, mementos from the past, or just things that realistically have little to no value, but to you they do. Sentimental value, there you go. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit today, in the idea of things having sentimental value and as to why they have sentimental value, and differentiating it from between sentimental value versus some money value. I don't know if that wouldn't be the right term. There's another better way of saying that, but differentiating between the two, because sometimes people conflate the two. I feel like most of the time they will conflate the two, or at least if they don't necessarily, there will be something of theirs that they own that has a certain amount of sentimental value that no matter what they do, they will probably never get rid of. We'll talk maybe about that in the voiceover, but for now, I just wanted to say it was something that I did think a lot about whilst doing the garage clean out, specifically for my stuff. Now, I can't say about others, because others might not even know half of the stuff that was down there, so that's a whole other story. But when I looked at some of this stuff, I was like, man, why am I holding on to these? Like, why am I holding on to these old boxes? Old boxes is one that I used to do all the time, and now I don't anymore. So, for example, I only hold on to one box, and that is for any electronic. I only hold on to one box, and that box is the one for my PC case. And why? Because whenever I decide to move, I can put my PC in that box, and it's already ready to be moved because it already had the case within it. You know what I mean? So, there you go. That's like the ultimate hack there for those who have built their own PC and it came in a box. Just keep the box, and then there you go. You have a place to move. If you don't plan on moving ever, just get rid of it. That's the one box that I've kept. But I mean, I used to keep boxes all the time of like video game systems, cameras, any high-end electronic, computer parts, things like that. And sometimes they used to store, depending on what they would store, so sometimes they would store like the user instruction manuals, which that's the stupid stuff that it shouldn't have, but it'll house like the old video game console or old computer parts, and that's kind of understandable. I get it, you're just reusing a box, right? But when it is just holding like parts of a power supply or parts of a console, you know, the instruction manual with all like the legal stuff, and it's like, why am I holding on to this? What do I get out of holding on to this? Now, you could apply what I said about the PC thing to all of these things, but realistically, most of those things you were going to hold within your hand or are already in a PC. So there's no real point into holding on to these boxes, really. It's more of a sentimental value, or like a value that you want to see visually, even though you're going to also play with the thing that you bought, so realistically it wouldn't matter per se, but it's just an interesting thing. But I definitely got rid of that feeling or thing to do with a lot of products that I get now. I don't have a necessary tie to those things because at the end of the day they just take up space, so it is what it is. But with that being said, we'll talk more about this on the inside. Alright, so on this day started out with squats, which were good. Hate doing them in the cage, but it is what it is. So, back to the main subject matter. Why are you holding on to this? I've been doing a lot of cleaning in my garage because of a recent want for a home gym and also the ability to make it, but I've been cleaning out a lot of stuff, and it has been a question that I've had to ask myself quite a bit. There are a lot of things like that. There's another thing that we got rid of. I mentioned it briefly in the portion before this, but basically the thing that I was talking about getting rid of was my old couch that I used to have in my bedroom, because I used to sit on it with my 2 dogs and we used to just chill around there. But I had to get rid of it because 1, it stinks, but 2, also it was just taking up space. I have no more real time to spend with my dog on there, and the time that we spend on there, we just spend it on the bed. So that's something like a little bit of a why was I holding on to this for such a long time. Now, part of it was because it was where my dog used as a bed, but now he just uses my bed as a bed. And also, couch was for me and my 2 dogs, but one of them passed, unfortunately, and thus made it so the entire space was kind of useless. It didn't help that the couch was also full of residual pee from my dog who had bladder cancer because he couldn't hold it in anymore, unfortunately. But still, that was something that I was kind of like, why am I holding on to this thing? And it wasn't necessarily that much of a thought process of getting rid of it, because it was just taking up space. There were many other reasons why I was just like, all right, it's time. I could have cleaned it. I could have done a bunch of stuff with it, but I decided there's no point in holding on to this. I think for the next episode, I'll go a little bit more into the mental side of things, because I think physically, it's pretty obvious when you can get rid of stuff and whether or not it's useful to hold on to or not. I think there's a whole other part with the mental side of this. We'll get to that in the next chapter. Then there are a few other things like that I was going through when I was going through my garage, like just like random magazines or random stationery, or I used to be really into stationery for some reason. I don't even remember why, but things like that, papers, posters, certain posters that are just old and wouldn't even be able to hold up if I had it out. So things like that, you just kind of look at them and figure out, all right, do I really need this? Do I really need this gamer's guide for video games that all can be looked up online? Like, do I really need this? It's weird because I think about it a lot, and I was like, I don't want to necessarily get rid of it because some of this stuff is kind of important to me. I mean, that book that I was just talking about is something that I remember reading all the time as a kid just to pass the time, even for games that I never had, but I ended up eventually getting some of those games because of the fact that they had cheats on the manual. So I was like, oh, okay, let me check this out. There's things like that where I'm like, all right, am I going to really use this again? Or the answer is really no, not really, but I would like to one day have it be able to store it and thus look at it again in the future whenever it needs to be, because they have some type of sentimental value, and sentimental value is one of those things that you can never really put a price on. Of course, everybody has their own sentimental value things. If you don't, that's very interesting, because everything has basically a story, and that's why we like holding on to a lot of the stuff that we do. Sentimental value is really the key factor to it all, and thinking about, this did do something for me. This shaped my life, basically. And that's what ended up making it so whether or not I would keep certain things or not. Stationery, like I said, I used to be a huge fan of stationery. I got rid of a lot of it because it's not anything important and special. It's probably a part of me that doesn't matter. Obviously, there's the other part where they might have something that has monetary value in the future. I have a bunch of old school video games that would probably fetch a fair price right now, probably in like 5 years, even more, because I have it in mostly good condition. But that's something I don't think I'd ever really let go of, because one, it also, besides monetary value, it also has a sentimental value, because these things have been with me for such a long time. I've taken care of them for such a long time. And also there's something that I would like to pass down and would like for my children to be able to experience and see what it was like when I liked video games and things like that. And I think that's the main thing. I think not everything that has necessarily a sentimental value should be kept, because there's just certain things that don't need to be kept. But it is an understandable thing to do, especially because there's just some things that are irreplaceable because they are tied to certain memories and certain things like that. It's tough to let things go when they just bring back so many memories and good times of a simpler time in your past. So I think it's just interesting to think about these things and why, and remember those times because they are very valuable. Holding on to some of these things is a perfectly normal thing to happen. I feel like most people have these things, but there are limits to it, of course. I think that we have to talk about briefly the holding on to too many things, and then you get into the idea of hoarding, but that's really a whole episode on its own because that is the complete opposite of just holding on to mementos, really, and more so making things up to make mementos, if that makes any sense.
New Transformers Armada with power-linking Minicon warriors. Unlock new weapons, new attacks in the fight between good and evil. New Transformers Armada. Sold separately, actual change time will vary.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. Very happy, very tired on the way home. A little hot, so I'm gonna make this a little quicker than normal. But anyways, back to the main subject matter. Why are you holding on to this? So this particular episode, I guess I will say that this one is more of a physical attribute, as in material possession, as to why you're holding on to it. I talked about some of the reasons why or why not you'd hold on to something, you know, sentimental value, monetary, that's the word, monetary value, whatever it is, there's a reason for it. And when it comes to physical items, there is something that is based psychologically on it, you know, why are you holding on to it, and such the case may be, but that is only part of it. I feel like this subject matter can also be talked about in the other sense, where why are you holding on to it mentally, which could be a whole other subject matter, because it isn't necessarily based on not necessarily based material possession, but more so along the lines of memories, thoughts, feelings, and or anything else that may or may not be good for you, depending on what it is. But that's for a different story for a different day. But I think this one will be just the more materialistic portion of things, because it's a little bit of a difference, I would say. Although in the same vein, per se, they are slightly in a different entire realm, because something can be just sentimental and or just something that just has monetary value that you just want to keep around, or you know, you just have something that you would like to pass down. There's a lot of other things like that, and while there are probably crossovers between the two subjects because they are in the same vein, like I said before, this one there's a little more or less reasoning as to why or why not, without as much feeling or event or thing particularly. The other one's a little bit more broader, but at the same time a little bit more of a deeper subject in a certain sense. It all just depends, really. But in this case, when it comes to holding on to things, I think I asked myself that a lot, and now it's more of a, for my future home is the reason why I hold on to some of these things. And then the only other reason why I would hold on to things now is if I know I can pass it down to somebody else, like a future kid of mine or something like that, because then I know that the things that I liked, I can continue on for them to like and them to watch and grow up and see and play with and things like that, and then it'll live on in a different generation at a different time. And it's not necessarily trapped with my childhood, but it could be extended forward into another childhood. But it also depends, really. I have a bunch of video game collection that I could probably sell for a good amount of money, but I'm gonna probably keep it, one, because it's gonna accrue value, but two, also because I know that I'd want my child to play these games because this is what I grew up on, and this is when video games had a soul and a purpose and all that other stuff. But that is a different conversation for a different day. With that being said, Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one particularly. What are you holding on to in some parts of your house that you're like, why do I still have this? Or what is this doing here? Or, oh yeah, I forgot I had this. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Or if you haven't, you should clean your house and see what you have around you, because you'd be very surprised what you're still holding on to. So it is what it is. But please tell me in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Stay warm out there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace!